Yes, thank you, Councillor Wong Tam. Great, welcome to everyone to tonight's event, everyone. My name is Joe Mihevc, and I will be facilitating tonight's event to share information on 67 Adelaide Street East and to provide opportunities to speak with city staff, NAMIRES, the architect, and to ask questions about this project. For more information, you can visit the project website, which is at www.toronto.ca/shelter replacement and expansion project. I'll eventually put that in the chat function or in one of the functions here so that you can see it. For accessibility, if you require accommodation, phoning in is better than computer audio, and the adaptive technology on your own phone actually works better if you phone in. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement, and I'll invite Suhal from the Shelter Support and Housing Administration Division of the city to do that. Over to you, Suhal.
Thank you, Joe. We acknowledge the land we are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. When I reflect on the land acknowledgement, I am filled with an immense sense of loss for the many traditions and cultures that were lost as a result of colonialism. I also feel privileged to learn about Indigenous traditions and cultures that the many Indigenous staff that have worked on this project have shared with me. After this meeting, we will share a video on the 67 Adelaide webpage that we encourage you to view, titled Awakenings. We Were Always Here, Acknowledgement, a film by Jonathan Elliott 2020. The video sheds light on how Indigenous people's lives and histories have shaped Toronto's origins and asks the question, in this era of reconciliation, how do we acknowledge our collective history? Back to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Suhal. Next slide, please, Marcus. Connecting via phone. If you cannot hear or understand what is being said, please dial 416-915-6530 to connect to the session by phone. You'll be prompted to ask an access code. The access code to the event is on the screen there, but I'll read it out loud. It's 2455-720-1825. Feel free to join that way if that is more helpful to you. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded, and for your opinions, statements, and voice will be a part of the public record. Participants are asked not to share any personal information about themselves or other people, such as name, address, or contact information within the meeting. If you wish to discuss a private matter, please contact us at clc.67adelaide@gmail.com. There will be a number of presenters that you will hear from today. Along with myself, there'll be Councillor Kristen Wong Tam, City Councillor for Ward 13, Justin Lewis, the Director of Infrastructure Planning and Development, Shelter Support and Housing Administration, City of Toronto, Charles Rosenberg, the Principal of Hilditch Architects and the architect for this site, and Steve Teekins, the Executive Director of NAMIRES. We will also be joined during the question period by a number of city staff who may be helpful in answering any questions. Next slide, thank you. The purpose of the meeting is to provide an overview of 67 Adelaide Street East Indigenous Men's Shelter Program, including services and supports currently being planned for the site. It is also to respond to questions, concerns, and offers of support from the community. And at the end of the day, it is to contribute to the success of the shelter in the community. You will see the schedule there before you, but basically the opening remarks and the presentation on 67 Adelaide Street East will take about 45 minutes. There is an extensive slide deck that eventually will be on the city's website, and it is important that we go through it all, so that's why that 45 minutes is there. Then we have questions and answers and feedback for 70 minutes, and closing and wrap up for 5 minutes. Once again, staff, all kinds of staff will be here later on to answer any questions, respond to concerns and offers of support. And at the end of the day, all of this will also be posted on the city's website. So now we'll get into the presentations themselves. And our first up is opening remarks by Councillor Kristen Wong-Tam. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time from your evenings away from family to be here tonight. I do truly value your interest in this project and, of course, your participation. I'll look forward to listening to your questions and hearing the answers. And I also am privileged to have about 2 minutes to speak, so I'm going to take my time to do that. I am very much keen on hearing the dialogue that's going to unfold. I've had an opportunity to work with NAMI Res now over a number of years. They operate currently a housing facility right in our ward, Ward 13 off of Homewood Avenue. And I can tell you with no uncertainty and with all confidence that I have that they will be an excellent neighbor and operator in the St. Lawrence neighborhood. And I say this largely because their facility on Homewood has been operating for a number of years, and they have been exceptional neighbors with respect to how they treat their building, the quality of care they deliver to their clients and to their guests, as well as the way they move through the community conversations that take place that are there. The property at 67 Adelaide, as many of you are aware, is number one, acquired by the city, but also at this point in time, it is now part of a long-term plan from Shelter Support Housing and Administration to convert this project into a transitional living and shelter facility. So they went through a process of reviewing how to best serve the community, and in this case, the community of interest would be the Indigenous community. So I think what I can tell you is that the project has been years in development from SSHA, that's Shelter Support Housing Administration. So if I've used the acronym without explaining myself, please let me know. I'll try not to do that. But more importantly, I had 3 conversations, focused and direct conversations with both SSHA staff and Steve Teakin, who you're going to meet very shortly, the Executive Director of NAMI Res, to sort of share what I believe would be most likely community concerns. I hope I did a good job of relaying what the community concerns would be. And those community concerns, as I see it, are going to be largely around property standard, safety and security, community relationships and partnerships, making sure that there's wraparound supports, and of course, making sure that there's open and respectful dialogue. And having a wrap around but quick response when community concerns are raised. And so all of those issues were brought forward, and I can tell you that you know, I'm very much satisfied with how both the SSHA staff as well as NAMI Res responded. They didn't shy away from what I believe are going to be concerns for the community. They pretty much leaned right into it and said yes, they're going to address those concerns head on. And that based on their track record of proven success of operating other facilities, we will be able to see and expect the same success that is here. I think one of the quick early indications of how this is going to work and why I'm confident that this will work well is largely because of you know, immediate quick responses to what community has already identified as problematic or challenging within the existing 67 Adelaide structure. So just by I'm not going to reveal the whole presentation, but I can tell you that, you know, some of the challenges that existed on Adelaide with the front door opening without a formal greeting and reception area of the building, that's going to be changed, and the main entrance will be relocated to Church Street, where there is actually a formal reception and a formal receiving area. So small design changes that will produce some very big outcomes for us are going to be before us and discussed very shortly. The other thing that I can offer you is that I know that NAMI Res is very committed to building a pathway to housing. So therefore, the shelter is in itself not going to be the end resolution. That's just the beginning. The path of a recovery and the path of going back indoors permanently, where people can actually then reside and live independently, a life of dignity, and one that we can all be proud of. And I think that that is going to be the ultimate goal of NAMI-RES's success, is that if they can work hard and work themselves into almost non-need, meaning end to homelessness and the end to shelters, that is what we're going to be striving for. And then finally, I want to offer you this. In the era of truth and reconciliation, and all that we have learned as people who are living in Toronto and working in Canada, I think that we have already seen some of the challenges as it exists right now with respect to how to make right what has been long time historical wrongs, especially ones that have been inflicted on Indigenous people. One of the reasons why I'm so confident that this will be a successful program is that it's never been done before, not here in this capacity. Not that NAMI-RES hasn't operated housing and shelter facilities before, but the way it's going to operate, I think, is going to be very different. And that has everything to do with culturally appropriate care and services and support, shelter facilities and housing for Indigenous people by Indigenous people. And that alone is a big paradigm shift from the failed shelter programs that don't work. And that includes temporary shelter facilities and hotels that had to be rapidly opened during COVID, which we wouldn't necessarily do under normal pre-pandemic conditions, but had to be done to ensure physical distancing. So I know that the outcome here, I hope, and I actually know, is going to be very different, because this is a very different program. And you're going to hear from Steve himself about his commitment to making sure that the program is successful, but also his relationship with the community is successful, because the two are going hand in hand. So I'll look forward to the dialogue and any questions that you may have for me as a local councillor. Thank you very much, Joe, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Wong Tam, for your very good comments. We're now going to move to the African, just a few business items before we start with the presentations themselves from city staff, the architect, and the executive director of NAMI-RES. Next is the African ancestral acknowledgement that I'll read out. The City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers or as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So on the issue of accessibility, if you require an accessibility-related accommodation, adaptive technologies on your phone often work best. Panelists, like myself, as I'm doing, will describe the content on the slides during the presentation. That's why we almost read them beginning to end. The video recording of this meeting will be closed captioned when it's posted on the project website. You may also wish to familiarize yourself with the WebEx platform and your phone or computer, knowing how to raise and unraise your hand to ask a question and how to type questions in the Q&A box helps make the meeting smoother. And we will review how to do this together before we start the Q&A a little bit later on. A note on online meeting code of conduct. I encourage you to be brief and limit yourself to one question or comment at a time. Be a good listener and share the space with your neighbors. There will be other opportunities to engage and offer feedback and insight. Be patient. We will do our best to resolve technical issues if they occur. And last but not least, perhaps most importantly, be respectful. The City of Toronto is an inclusive public organization. Racist or other forms of prejudicial, derogatory, or discriminatory comments and questions, including name calling, will not be tolerated. Simple as that. The question and answer period. After the presentation, participants can ask questions and make comments in two ways. You may want to be thinking about this as you hear the presentations. City staff will continuously monitor and review the Q&As section that's not open yet to ensure the most common issues are addressed in tonight's meeting. Participants can, this is one option, type questions into the Q&A box on the lower right side of the screen. It's not open yet, but it will be later. Or you can verbally ask questions by raising your hand, and that's available to folks on the computer and the phone, and later on I'll explain how you can do that on the phone. Okay, so that's later, and now I'm going to turn the floor over to the Director of Infrastructure Planning and Development, Shelter Support and Housing Administration for the City of Toronto, the wonderful Justin Lewis. Over to you, Justin.
Miigwech, thank you, Joe. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Perfect. So first and foremost, before I get started, I want to say Ani Bonjour and good evening to everyone. And before I get started, I'd like to also introduce myself. So my name is Justin Lewis, and I'm Métis from Northern Ontario originally. I also want to echo the land acknowledgement and say I am grateful for living and working on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe people, and Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My title at the City of Toronto is Director of Infrastructure Planning and Development. I want to say chi miigwech, or a big thank you, for everyone taking their time this evening to join us and to hear more about 67 Adelaide Street East and the services and supports planned for that site. Tonight, I'll walk you through a presentation that provides an overview of homelessness in Toronto and the services that Shelter Support and Housing Administration provides. I hope this presentation addresses some of the questions that you may have, and after the presentation, staff will be available to answer your questions and respond to your concerns. And thanks, Marcus, for going to the next slide. The City of Toronto is committed to supporting the rights of Indigenous people as set out in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, otherwise referred to as UNDRIP, and in its statements of commitment to the Aboriginal communities of Toronto, adopted in 2010. This includes Indigenous peoples' rights to self-determination and determining and developing priorities and strategies. Shelter Support and Housing Administration Division is also committed to supporting self-determination of Indigenous people and organizations through Indigenous-led solutions and meaningful engagement and collaboration, as articulated in its Meeting in the Middle Engagement Strategy and Action Plan that was co-created with Indigenous partners to identify actions to more meaningfully address Indigenous homelessness in Toronto. Next slide, please, Marcus. So this slide, just for those of you, there's a picture on this slide that shows a shelter room within one of the projects that we're currently, I believe it's within NAMERES or one of the programs that they have there. It shows a shelter bed, a desk, a side table, and some pictures on the wall. The City of Toronto conducted its fifth Street Needs Assessment in April of 2021. The Street Needs Assessment is a needs assessment survey and a point-in-time count of people experiencing homelessness in Toronto, led by Shelter Support and Housing Administration. This report provides critical data to understand the impact of the pandemic on homelessness and the broader needs and barriers to services for people experiencing homelessness in Toronto. Based on the 2021 Street Needs Assessment, it is estimated that there were 7,347 people experiencing homelessness in Toronto on April 21st, 2021. At that time, 5,810 or 79% of the total homeless population were staying in city administrated sites. People who became homeless are staying in our shelters longer than they have in the past. Roughly 77% of respondents to the Street Needs Assessment study considered themselves chronically homeless. And that means someone who has been homeless for 6 months or more in the past year. Challenges in the shelter system have been compounded by the opioid crisis and, of course, COVID-19 pandemic. More than 3/4 of people experiencing homelessness report having one or more types of health challenges. Half of all respondents reported a mental health issue and 42% identified a substance use issue. There has been an overall decrease in homelessness from 8,715 in 2018 to 7,347 in 2021. So that's approximately 16%, largely due to a fewer number of refugee families as a result of COVID-19 border restrictions. Capacity in the shelter system for single individuals is currently higher than before the pandemic. Outdoor homelessness has increased to an estimated 742 people sleeping outdoors on April 21st, 2021, and that was from an estimated 533 staying outdoors in 2018. As a part of the city's COVID-19 response, the city has moved 5,518 people experiencing homelessness from the shelter system into permanent housing from April 2020 to April 2021. More than 1,600 people staying in encampments have been referred to safe inside spaces since April of 2020. Next slide, please. This slide includes graphs pulled from the 2021 Street Needs Assessment Report. The top image demonstrates the percentage of Indigenous respondents experiencing homelessness. This overrepresentation is greater in the outdoor homelessness population, where Indigenous people represent 23% of the population. The bottom image is a bar graph that demonstrates the difference in length of homelessness that Indigenous people face compared to the non-Indigenous homeless population. Indigenous respondents are represented by the green bar. It is clear that Indigenous people experience chronic homelessness more often than non-Indigenous people. Indigenous homelessness should be understood as the direct outcome of ongoing colonialization, structural institutional racism, cultural genocide, and effects of intergenerational trauma. Creating more Indigenous specific homelessness services is necessary to help Indigenous people experiencing homelessness receive their supports that they need. Next slide, please. So the next slide speaks to the 2021 Street Needs Assessment. And that report also found that there is a gap in access to substances use treatment and harm reduction services in particular. As demonstrated in the graph on the slide, this issue is more prevalent in the Indigenous homelessness population. 26% of Indigenous respondents reported needing access to harm reduction supports, compared to 11% of non-Indigenous respondents. This data demonstrates the need to offer Indigenous-specific harm reduction programming. Next slide, please. This slide includes a map of shelters and related homelessness services in Toronto. So Shelter Support and Housing Administration is the division at the city who manages the emergency shelter system. We currently oversee 80 shelters and 24-hour respite sites operated by skilled community agencies, and we directly operate over 20 shelter programs. As you can see, availability of emergency shelter services varies across communities throughout the city. Our knowledge, expertise, and responsibility is focused on three outcomes: provide people experiencing homelessness in Toronto access to safe, high-quality emergency shelter. People are provided with housing-focused supports that ensure homelessness is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And low-income households have access to housing benefit programs that provide affordability and stability. Providing emergency shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness is an important community service that is offered across communities throughout the city. Sites are located within communities, which mean that they are often located near other community services like libraries, community centers, schools, and healthcare services. Shelters are located within communities not only because it's important for people staying at these locations to be close to community resources, but shelters are only allowed in areas that are zoned as residential or mixed commercial residential use. We cannot open shelters in areas zoned as industrial. Next slide, please. This slide includes an image with the locations of Indigenous homelessness services in Toronto. In contrast to the previous slide, you can see how many fewer Indigenous homelessness service sites that are available throughout the city. This image, in addition to the 2021 Street Needs Assessment data about the overrepresentation of Indigenous people experiencing homelessness, both highlight the immense need that Toronto has for Indigenous homelessness services. Next slide, please. A common community question we are asked is about how the city makes decisions about the sites that are selected for a new shelter, and so I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing information that I hope is helpful. Shelters are one of many municipal services that the city provides. Like daycares, libraries, and community centers, it is important that shelters are available in neighborhoods across Toronto. When searching for a new shelter location, city staff will seek buildings that are available, affordable, of a suitable size, and close to transit and services. As authorized by city bylaws, city staff have the delegated authority to site new shelters in locations that meet zoning requirements before engaging with the community. Next slide, please. Our goal is to ensure that there are services in all neighborhoods so that as much as possible, people can stay within their communities, maintain their employment, and stay connected with friends and family if they experience homelessness. So we comply with the city bylaws and the Toronto Housing Charter. We work with our real estate division, allowing them to source potential properties based on criteria we provide them. Once a potential property that meets the zoning requirements is identified, we assess the suitability of the location for its access to transit and other services in the community, such community like community centers and healthcare services. 67 Adelaide is currently being used as a women's drop-in service. The service is planned to move soon to another location, at which time renovations will begin at 67 Adelaide Street East. Next slide, please. Over the last few decades, shelters evolved in a way in which they are designed. The city has developed a new shelter design guidelines that provides best practices for the planning and design of shelters to produce positive outcomes and experience for all shelter users, staff, communities, and visitors. The guidelines facilitate designs that promote dignity, comfort, and a choice to support shelter users in moving to permanent housing. This shelter was designed with the best practice. Our shelters are usually designed, and 67 Adelaide Street East, it was designed with the best practices in mind. Next slide, please. So this image is meant to be used as an example of how 67 Adelaide Street East will look once renovations are completed. This is Sagate's main gathering space that is used for programs, healing, and other cultural activities. The space has been used by the larger community and has become one of the more popular spaces in the local community for international storytelling events. The proposed project will have a similar space located on the 4th floor. In 2024, 67 Adelaide Street East will operate as an Indigenous men's shelter. The site is city-owned and will be operated by NamiRes. The site will have up to 75 beds available and will also include offices and program space. Next slide, please. So I want to say Chi Miigwech and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share the information from the city tonight. And I'd like to introduce Charles Rosenberg, who's our principal architect from Hilditch Architects, and he's working with NamiRes in the city on this project. So Charles, I'm going to pass it over to you. Chi Miigwech, everybody.
Thank you, Justin. We are really privileged to be part of this project. Next slide. During the renovations, as the councillor alluded to, the entrance to the site will be changed from Adelaide Street to Church Street. On the right-hand side, you can see an artist's concept of the rendering, showing how we intend to approach the design of this building. The change of the entranceway allows us to enter the building from the east, which is more inviting and holds cultural significance to reflect the journey the future residents are going to be on. The 4 colors represent the medicine wheel: red, white, yellow, and black, and they've been incorporated on both the east and north facades of the building and act as a beacon to the future residents. Next slide, please. The property is currently a 3-story building. Renovations of the building will convert the existing high 3rd floor interior space into an infilled 4th floor without raising the height of the building. A portion of the existing east roof will offer secure outdoor space to the residents. A new elevator will be added to provide access to all floors, and the building will incorporate the Toronto Green Energy Standards version 3 tier 2 with an aim to achieve close to a net zero gas emissions when it's completed. The project includes modernization of the building exterior so we can improve the performance of the building envelope. Each floor will have a staff and program component, and the entrance will have a carefully designed and staffed welcome center. The slide on the right is also the Sagate building that we designed for NamiRes at Vaughan Road in Bathurst. And it's just a glimpse into the front entranceway that is culturally responsive in terms of its use of materials, shapes, and forms, and showcases Indigenous art on the journey from the front door, which is also located at the east and moves you through the building towards the west. Can you please show me the next slide? With respect to Committee of Adjustment, the requirement is for the building to have 4 parking spaces. Currently, the building has no parking spaces available. However, there are many public parking lots available in the area. As well, the site is well situated for use of the TTC. The change in program and use results in less need for parking than the current operation. So in fact, it is a minor variance that, as I mentioned earlier, is for 4 parking spaces. Next slide. And I'll pass it over to Stephen Teakins.
Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Executive Director of NamiRes.
Thank you, Joe and Charles. Bonjour, Josh Jejuan, Nabe, Manadon, Hernandez, Nakas, Babicheshi, Dodem, Nibising, Dunjaba. So what I said was in the Ojibwe language, a traditional greeting. I introduced myself. My name is Steve Teakins. I'm from the Martin clan and I'm from Nipissing First Nation. I'm also the Executive Director of NamiRes, and interestingly enough, today marks my 10-year anniversary as the Executive Director of NamiRes. I've been at NamiRes now for 13 years, and coincidentally, this low barrier shelter has been in the works for almost 13 years now. So I'm really pleased that we've arrived at this time and place to talk about this new shelter, to share with you what it is that we'll be doing. So if you see the pictorial there, that's the NamiRes org chart, and it highlights all the services that we offer to community. And I know it looks like a flower with a bunch of rings going around it. If you can zoom in and look a little bit closer, it highlights our continuum of care and all the services that we operate. So at the center of this pictorial org chart is clients. So regardless of what programs and services we operate, we all know that the clients are at the center of everything we do. So all of our services are wrapped around our clients. So the next little ring around the clients is the elders that we work with, and they work directly with our clients. They also work directly with our various teams and programs and services to ensure that our programs are always culturally informed and that they're delivered to people with kindness. So the petals of the flower, I often say, our staff represent that flower that do that frontline work. Sometimes tell them we're not the prettiest flower around, but we sure are a nice flower that helps people. So contained in those petals of the flower is our continuum of care. So our continuum of care starts with our street outreach team that goes around on the streets. The NamiRes outreach team is the first City of Toronto Streets to Homes team that started, I believe it was in 2016. And we continue to do that streets to homes work and support people that are in encampments and isolation hotels and visibly homeless and out on the streets. The next petal in this org chart is our men's residence, NamiRes Shelter. And NamiRes Shelter and the organization have been around since 1985. And our sole mission, to paraphrase it, is more or less to work with Indigenous men that experience homelessness and help them to get housed and become self-fulfilled and achieve their goals. Another one of the programs we offer is Minokanagoan. Minokanagoan in Ojibwe means looking for the good in myself. And it's a mental health response program. It's an intensive case management program that works with Indigenous men that have severe mental health concerns. And it helps them to get housed and stay housed, and with follow-up supports that follow them for a period of time. The next piece of our service offerings is Sagate. Sagate is a transitional shelter for Indigenous men. They can stay in this transitional shelter for up to a year. We have very intensive programming there. We have a very good life skills program called the Pinamowani. The Pinamowani in Ojibwe means like looking for confidence in myself. A lot of people that have experienced homelessness often lack confidence. So we have a variety of life skills programs that help instill confidence in the participants in the programming. And some of the programs can include Ojibwe or Cree language instruction, because the root of our culture is in our languages, and it helps people to understand, you know, where we come from and who we are as a people. We also have circles and hard skill programs like life skills and financial literacy, to name a few. And that's all part and parcel of the program offerings at Sagate. We also have affordable housing. We have 2 of them currently and 2 more in the works. We have one called Ogichita Mishkiki Wigwam, which is in Parkdale area. We started that housing about 12 years ago. It's deeply affordable housing. It's 22 units for Indigenous men. And about 40% of our residents at that house have been there since day one. They're long-term tenants, and it's given them a real opportunity to grow roots in Toronto and be part of the community. We also operate in Councillor Wong Tam's ward, Gnu Pune Wakinagan, which in Ojibwe means the Golden Eagle Landing. And that's 16 units of affordable housing in Homewood neighborhood. And very pleased to be part of you know, Councillor Wong Tam's ward and providing these vital services. So the flower is the programs and services. And you see the leaves in this org chart. So these are the COVID response, which we opened up just a little over a year ago. We operate a COVID testing center for the Indigenous community in partnership with St. Michael's Hospital as well, Living House, as well as the 7th Generation Midwives. And it's an Indigenous, for Indigenous by Indigenous COVID response that's comprehensive and offers COVID testing, vaccinations, as well as their own contact tracing. And then the ring around this flower is our administrative team, and they support the staff that do that frontline work with community, and they make sure that we're able to provide those programs in a meaningful way. The red circle in this org chart is my role as executive director. And as the executive director, I'm looking inward, making sure our programs in the organization are responsive to clients, but I'm also looking outside and looking for opportunities. My role, I'm overseen by our circle of directors, who are other places we call board of directors, and they provide the governance for the organization. And our members of our circle of directors come from the Indigenous community in the Toronto area. So it's a brief overview of the services that we provide in NAMIRES. And this new shelter will expand our continuum of care to provide more supports to homeless people that really need them in a low barrier setting and in a harm reduction manner. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So program goals. So all of NAMIRES's program goals are to help people who've experienced homeless to no longer be homeless. And usually the solution to homelessness is housing. But in addition to working with people to get them housed, we also provide a variety of cultural supports. And we support people in the 4 quadrants of the medicine wheel, which are the physical self. Physically, we provide supports that help people to be physically well. We have mental supports to help feed the mind, to help the mind to be healthy. And we have, a variety of mental health supports as well. We have spiritual programming, which is coming from the Indigenous ways of knowing and is respectful of Indigenous cultures. We also have emotional supports that help people, to be emotionally healthy. So if we are able to help people in those 4 quadrants, the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, and you're in balance with all 4 of those quadrants, you're going to be a healthy human being. So NAMIRES's team includes traditional elders, teachers, case managers, resident care workers, street outreach workers, housing support, and aftercare workers. We have registered nurses on staff. We have a psychiatrist and a physician that comes a half day a week to support our residents. We also have an Ashkabewis, which Ojibwe means like a helper, a spiritual helper. And we have a life skills coordinator as well. So these programs have been very responsive to the men that use them and have helped them move along their journey away from homelessness. We can go to the next slide, please. So one of the new program offerings that NamiRes is going to provide in this new shelter at 67 Adelaide is a managed alcohol program. This falls within harm reduction types of services. And the goal of the managed alcohol program is to reduce harms associated with chronic alcohol use. And we know with managed alcohol programs, they increase the overall health of people who are long-term alcohol users that are alcohol dependent, and so dependent that they can't go for long bouts without using alcohol without getting physically ill. So this program will be client-centered, and we'll be working with clients in managing their alcohol use and reducing the harms associated with their alcohol use. There'll be food, and there'll be supports in place to help them move along their journey. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the need for Indigenous harm reduction. Well, in the Indigenous community currently, there are no Indigenous harm reduction shelters. The 2 shelters that NamiRes operates, let me go back. There's no Indigenous harm reduction shelters for Indigenous men that are experiencing homelessness in Toronto. I believe there might be an Indigenous youth one in the city, but anyways, NamiRes operates 2 abstinence-based shelters, and they serve a purpose and they work with our clients very well. But we understand that there's a segment of the Indigenous population that are chronically homeless, that don't have access to vital shelter services to help give them a roof over their head and focus on what their goals are. So harm reduction program provides supports for people that are homeless and reduces the harms associated with whatever their illicit drug use might be. And there's a need for a continuum of shelter services that include wet shelters, shelters with restrictions around alcohol and substance use, as well as abstinence-based shelters. There's a growing body of evidence to support the need for Indigenous harm reduction shelters in the city and elsewhere. And more recently, NamiRes published a consultation report that we had hosted a conference back in 2011 to create a harm reduction approach. And NamiRes has been endeavoring to run this type of program for a long time. And we know that harm reduction works well for people that are, active users. If we can go to the next slide, please. So NamiRes operates a range of supports for our residents, including our tenants as well as our shelter residents. And this 67 Adelaide's site will be no different. With our existing program like we offer currently, our programming will be operating 24/7. We're not going to be one of the shelters that sends residents on their way early in the morning and asks them to return just before dinner time. No, the residents are welcome to stay in the shelter during the day and participate in programming that we're going to have take place in the shelter. They'll also have 3 square meals a day, including a snack. And they'll be healthy and nutritious because we all know that food is medicine. And it's important that we put healthy food into our bodies so that we can grow a healthy mind and be physically healthy. We'll also operate a variety of cultural programs as well as recreational and social programs. There'll be access to harm reduction supports on site. And of course, in this pandemic, we're going to have COVID-19 public health measures in place. And NamiRes is no stranger to creating Indigenous responses to COVID. That's evidenced with our COVID testing site called the Doje Mino Nasewano. We'll also have case managers to work with the residents at the shelter to help them progress along in their journeys to leave homelessness behind. We go to the next slide, please. So this is a photo of the NamiRes shelter, and this photo was taken last summer, and we plastered the building with orange T-shirts when there was discoveries of unmarked graves at various residential school sites. So we wanted to show support for our First Nations community members by putting up orange T-shirts to remind people of the awful things that took place. So rights and responsibilities. Well, shelter residents are equal citizens, just like those of us that are on this meeting today. So they have the same rights and are equal citizens of the city, the same way as we all have rights and freedoms and responsibilities as residents of the city. And we want to ensure that Namiarans will be good neighbors and will provide supports and efforts to address the concerns that community members may have. So, we're going to endeavor to be good neighbors and demonstrate that through good programming, and we'll be responsive to the community concerns, and we'll endeavor to work with you to address any concerns you may have. So if we can go to the next slide, please, and I'll turn it back over to Joe. Miigwech, everyone.
Thank you, Steve, for your presentation and your words. They are much appreciated. The last bit, hang in there, folks. We're almost done all the presenting. Is really a conversation around how we're going to do community engagement. Slide, please. The city is committed to community engagement to ensure the success of the shelter in the community. The city engages with communities after the site is secured in advance of the site opening. The goal of the engagement is to support community members in welcoming the shelter residents into the community in a successful fashion. There you will see more information on community engagement is available on the project website. And here's a key email that you really want to take note of. From starting in the new year, and given that this isn't going to open until 2024, there will be occasional bulletins that will be and updates that will be provided. If you want to get on the list to receive those bulletins, just send an email. I'll be at the other end of that email that you see there on your screen. For those on the phone, it's clc.67adelaide@gmail.com. The actions currently underway in the area of community engagement, the community engagement facilitator has been hired. That is myself. I am already tracking community concerns, actions, follow-up, signs of support, and that is through the email that you see posted there. We have had some stakeholder meetings with some of the neighboring churches and organizations that are already working in the area. I'm open to visiting any co-op, condo board, if you need to have some specialized attention and questions as to how the impact to your particular building or area, happy to come. We've already done, or are in the middle of doing actually, this information session today. In 2024, about 6 months, maybe 9 months, maybe 1 year before the shelter opens, we will begin a community liaison committee, which is a representative group of people in the community that interface with NamiRes to bring the inside out and the outside in, to hear what is happening at the shelter, and also to bring community concerns and support to the shelter. Okay, we're going to move on to that. That's the community engagement piece. Now we're moving on into the area of questions, comments from you folks. Again, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded, and your opinions, statements, and voice will become part of the public record. Public participants are asked not to share any personal information about themselves and other people, such as the name, address, and contact information within the meeting itself. If you wish to discuss a private matter, please contact us again at that email. I want you to know as well that in addition to the people that we have as panelists right now, there are other staff from the city as well that will be helpful to our cause. Okay, so here is how it works. Again, the meeting is being recorded. Any information shared on the screen or verbally in the Q&A, including personal information, will be recorded recorded. For this reason, we recommend that personal information is not shared. In addition, yes, I said it, I'll say it again. In addition to the presenters, we are joined by a number of city staff. Slide. Oh no, sorry, stay on this slide, please. For those, if you could go back one, that would be great. Thank you. For those of you who have joined by computer and now are on your laptop or desktop, I'm going to provide an example of how to use the basics. You will see a raised hand icon on the right-hand side in the middle of your screen. To submit a verbal question, press the icon, that is to be able to speak to the larger group, press the icon to raise your hand. If selected, I will say your first name only and unmute you. After you ask your question, you will be invited to put yourself back on mute, press that icon again, and your hand will go down. You will also see a Q&A box towards the bottom right of your screen to ask a question. Use this box to submit a typed question. Only staff, city staff, will be able to see the questions. Ask the question of all or any of the panelists, and I will direct them to the appropriate person that can respectfully answer your question or add to your comments. Okay, next slide, please. If you are on the phone, there you have the dial-in number is 416-915-6530. Access code is 177-216-7952. People who have called in can ask questions verbally. That's an option that's open. To raise your hand virtually, just dial number 3 or press star 3. The host will see a hand up beside the first 3 digits of your phone number, alerting us that you would like to ask a question. During the Q&A period, the host will unmute you and let you know that you can speak. After your question has been answered, please dial star 3 to put your hand down. Okay, lastly, we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible, rotating between the 2 methods, the various methods: participation, phone, chat, and advanced emails. Our staff will continuously monitor and review the Q&A to ensure the most common issues are addressed in tonight's meeting. We will try to answer all the questions in the allotted time. For questions not answered, please reach out to me and I'll direct them to the right place at the email that's provided there, clc.67adelaide@gmail.com. In asking the questions, once again, please be respectful. The City of Toronto is an inclusive public organization. Racist or other forms of prejudicial, derogatory, or discriminatory comments or questions, including name calling, simply will not be tolerated. Okay, so let's go back and forth between the oral and written questions. Carolyn, do we have any oral questions yet?
No, no one has raised their hand yet.
Okay, then we'll go to a written question. Calvin, can you read out one of the written questions?
Sure, Joe. The first question is, can you define low barrier, please?
What is low barrier? That's a Justin question or a Steve question?
I'd be happy to answer that one. So low
You
barrier.
put the video on as well. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so low barrier is just a term used for not having preconditions for accessing shelter services. So for instance, with the current NAMI-RES shelters that are abstinence-based, so if you want to come to the existing NAMI-RES shelters and you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, well, that's a barrier to accessing service. So low barrier means more or less that there's not any preconditions to accessing the service. So if you're an active drug user or alcohol dependent, that won't be a barrier for you to access service at this site. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions yet, Carolyn?
I do not see any hands raised yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. On the on the written side, Calvin, and this is Calvin from Shelter Support and Housing Administration, as is Carolyn. Both are here to answer. One does the written questions, one does the oral questions. So Calvin, over to you to read out loud any written question. Calvin.
The next question is, as someone who lives close to the building, relating to the initial exterior design, that it seems to be cladding and disappointing. The limestone, brick, and granite and marble is being abandoned, and that there is an encouragement to improve this. And this question, the person asking the question would like to know if Heritage has looked at this site.
Okay, that's a question to the architect. Charles, has the Heritage Division in the City of Toronto looked at this site and commented on the cladding? There seems to be a concern.
I don't believe that Heritage has looked at this site necessarily, although we do know that it's not a listed building and there hasn't been any input from the city team in terms of concerns around heritage. One of the things that I would like to say, and this is just a personal opinion, is that the building was in fact purpose-built as a courthouse, I believe, and we're changing the typology of the building to something quite different right now. We wanted to introduce color, as I mentioned in my presentation, to represent the purpose of the building and to have a cultural reference to the Indigenous people that will be staying here. And it was also an attempt to take a building that, in fact, is fairly austere and to create something that might be a little bit more enlivening to the corner. We're introducing wood and natural materials in the building. And I just, my partner, Stephen, just let me know that it is in fact not a heritage building. So it's been confirmed that it's not. So I hope that I answered the question.
Great, thank you very much, Charles. Over to you again, Calvin. I see there's another question that has been written in.
Next question is, how many beds are available in the women's drop-in, and is there an increase in capacity for the proposed shelter?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. Justin, are you aware of how many beds are available in the women's drop-in?
Yeah, so the current capacity for Fred Victor, who's the operator there, is 44, and that's based on our current occupancy reports.
Sorry, and how many were in with the women's drop-in program, the existing Fred Victor run drop-in center? Do we know
That is the existing run Fred Victor drop-in, is the 44 beds.
44. Okay,
Yeah.
and the service of NamiRes will be?
I believe the presentation spoke to 75 beds, but again, that's based on physical distancing and stuff like that, and also design as we go through that, right? So I would have Steve also speak to that.
Steve, any comments here?
Okay, yeah, so we looked at the spacing of the beds, and they were all carefully thought out as to where each bed is placed with respect to social distancing in mind. And the proposed bed count will be 75 at this new site. And keeping in mind that we're also, the reason for this committee of adjustment that's been triggered is because on the third floor that has a double high ceiling, it's almost like a gymnasium in there, that there'll be additional floor space added to accommodate the additional beds, which will create new space.
Thank you very much, Steve. Carolyn, have any questions come in that where people want to ask them orally? Over to you.
I do not see any hands raised. No.
Okay, folks, feel free to ask your questions. This is your moment to ask that question that has been top of mind. Anything and everything that you want to know about NamiRes, about shelters in the City of Toronto, homelessness, about this particular site. This is your chance. We have a lot of folks with a lot of expertise in all these subject areas and this site in particular. available to answer and respond. Do we have anyone there, Calvin?
Yeah, we have a question that was pre-received. So this question is about why add a harm reduction program in the downtown core?
Why add a harm reduction program in the downtown core? I think that's a Justin question and a Steve question. Steve,
Yes.
do you want to go first?
Sure. So, you know, as we discussed earlier, there's a need for a continuum of shelter services. You know, often when we create approaches that is a one-size-fits-all approach, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So, the reason we want to have this harm reduction shelter downtown is because that's where a lot of the people who need these services will usually be. So, you know, by including what I guess if you want to use the term wet shelter, that's what this will be. We'll be increasing the shelter and housing options within this continuum, and will enable a larger number of individuals to be housed. In addition to some research that regards to Indigenous people in particular, that they're wary of services that don't necessarily, you know, engage with outreach programs due to negative experiences. So we want to have a culturally safe program for Indigenous folks in the downtown area. And if you may recall the slide that Justin shared earlier that showed the you know, the Indigenous shelters that are located downtown, there's so few of them, right? So, and we know that with the street needs assessment, Indigenous people are overrepresented among the homeless population in Toronto. And harm reduction is a way to work with a lot of people who may be experiencing homelessness that are, you know, have issues with using drugs or alcohol. So it's very much needed, and there's growing bodies of evidence and reports and so on that demonstrate this.
Thank you, Steve. Justin, do you want to add to that?
No, I think Steve answered that question really well, and I have nothing further to add. So thanks for that, Joe.
Thank you. Calvin, we have another written question, I see.
Yep, the next question is asking, why is there going to be another homelessness service being added into the downtown core?
Hey, maybe this is for maybe Justin. Respond.
I feel like I'm turning my video off and on all the time, so I apologize for that, Joe. Well, specific to this location and specific to this service, I would have to say that the reason for this service being added to the downtown core is because there is a large need for Indigenous services and harm reduction programming in this area, as well as, you know, as Steve previously spoke, he spoke to the street needs assessment and the statistics that were provided through that. There is no service in the downtown core that provides Indigenous men with this type of service, and that's really the main reason for this service coming into the community. Chimigwich.
Thank you, Justin. I see a related question in the Q&A.
Joe, Calvin. Someone has their hand raised.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you very much. So let's open the mic, so to speak, to the oral question.
So it is Christine. Christine, you're going to be unmuted.
Oh, Christine.
Hi, thanks. I have a comment and a question.
Thank you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much, Christine. So
the comment is the existing building is a constant target of graffiti. And so I am somewhat encouraged by the architectural rendering that you showed there that includes a mural on the church side. That tends to be where a lot of the graffiti occurs. So hopefully that kind of a surface treatment might discourage tagging. I just also would like, you know, the designers and the operators to know that currently the city has not been that responsive to cleaning up graffiti when it does occur. Usually they wait to be prompted by a report by one of the neighboring buildings. And even when that is reported, it takes a long, long time for the graffiti to be remedied. So I just want you guys to be aware that that is a bit of an issue. And it may play into some of your design ideas or concepts. So that was just a comment that I would like to share with you. The question that I have is, I realize that 76 Church, which is the High Hospital, which is now right now a temporary shelter. But let's say hypothetically, that was to become a permanent shelter. Would that have any bearing on your planning and programming for your building, just the proximity and the nearness of a second shelter?
Sorry, Christine, which shelter are you referring to?
76 Church Street. It's about 2 buildings south of the 67 Adelaide Street East.
Yes,
so I'm just curious to know that, let's just say hypothetically that was to become a permanent shelter. Would that, does that play into any way of any of the planning or organizing and programming that the shelter provides?
Great, that's a very good question. First, let's. I'd like Charles actually to weigh in on the relationship between graffiti and design, whether the building has been designed with a view to providing surfaces that are not that taggable.
Well, I really appreciate your observation, and there's a couple of things at work right now. Is that we're going to have what we call more eyes on the street in terms of how we situated the welcome center and the staff area within the building. So there's certainly going to be a lot more active participation by the staff of NAMI Res in keeping an eye on the building. I happen to live actually nearby the 2 NAMI Res, or actually 3 NAMI Res buildings at Bathurst and St. Clair, and I have to say I've actually never seen any graffiti on their buildings. So either they clean it up very, very quickly, and maybe Stephen Teakins can address that. The other thing is that what we've done on other buildings is we put a graffiti-proof coating on the lower level so that it makes it much, much easier to remove the graffiti and actually discourages from people from tagging the building. So the material that we have on the lower level is in fact a porcelain tile that would be a great material to put the graffiti coating on there. So we will look into that. I think it's a great idea.
Great, thanks, Charles. Over to you, Justin. 76 Church Street.
Thanks, Joe. And I think this is a really good question. It's unlikely that this location, 76 Church, will become a permanent site. I mean, hypothetically, I'm not necessarily going to go there. I'm going to speak to the facts around 76 Church, and it is a 5-year lease at that location. And the program is a part of our broader George Street revitalization project. And the plan is to move that program back to that location. So I do want to reinforce the fact that this is a temporary location, and it will move back to the larger project once complete.
Great, thank you very much, Justin. We have another oral question. Carolyn, can you open the mic and then introduce the questioner?
Yes, Melissa, I'm going to unmute you. Melissa, you have been unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Tansi, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Yeah?
Yes, hello, Melissa. Welcome.
Hi. Just on the topic of harm reduction from a question that came up earlier, I wondered if you could share a bit more about how harm reduction actually increases individual and community safety. And from that, also just wondering, so will this also be a safe consumption site? Sorry if I missed that in the presentation. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Good questions as well. Over to you. I think this is for Steve.
Okay, so I'll try my best to articulate the first part of your question about the benefits of harm reduction. And I'll jump right now though to the second part of your question, will this be a safe consumption site? So what Melissa is referring to in safe consumption, I believe, is safe injection of opioid drugs or other injectable types of illicit drugs. So no, it will not be a safe injection site or a safe consumption site. The main purpose of this harm reduction shelter is to provide managed alcohol program for residents that are alcohol dependent. And we will have all the other principles in delivery of harm reduction services. And so the benefits of harm reduction, and more particularly the benefits of providing a managed alcohol program. If you know a little bit about managed alcohol programs, they're starting to pop up at various sites across Canada. I understand the first managed alcohol program actually started here in Toronto at Seton House. I think it was in the mid-90s. And at the time when it was being created, a lot of the Seton House residents that would frequent the place would often drink during the daytime in the local parks around Seton House. And quite often the police would get regular phone calls about public intoxication. Some of these men would end up with various charges and fines, and often they didn't have the means to pay them. So Seton House started this pilot to operate a managed alcohol program. And shortly after it operated and it functioned for a period of time, they did an evaluation. And what they found was that the incidences with police were drastically reduced. The police weren't being called to interact with people for bouts of public intoxication in the city parks. I also, I'm not key on all the study areas, but I know the efficacy of other managed alcohol programs. They report that often they'll see a reduction of people that use that program in using hospitals or in using ambulance services. And the reason that there's a reduction is sometimes when people are so severely alcohol dependent, if they're not able to get alcohol and continue their usage, their body gets physically ill because they're going through withdrawals. And sometimes they'll go to the hospital to get treated for their ailments. So if there's a managed alcohol program in place, it will be a safe place for people to get their alcohol. It will be prescribed by a doctor. They'll examine liver functioning and making sure that even though they're using alcohol that is potentially harmful for the liver, they're reducing the harms associated with consuming alcohol. And so the harms will be reduced because it'll be prescribed like medication, and they'll be prescribed doses of alcohol to take at different times of the day, and the intervals between the doses will be spread out far enough so it doesn't decrease their liver functioning. And then also, having the site in place and allowing people to stay there during the day, it will reduce them going out in public places and drinking in public parks and that sort of thing. So they'll be less visible and they'll be in a safe place, working with experts and medical professionals to make sure that they're prescribed the alcohol in a safe way that will benefit their health in the long run.
Thanks, Steve. That was the best articulation of managed alcohol 101 that I've heard in a while. We'll go now to written questions. Over to you, Calvin. But before we do that, I'd ask, is it Christine and the person who just spoke, if you could lower your hand by going to the right side of your screen, you would be able to do that. That will help open it up for others. But over to you, Calvin, for a written question.
Great, thanks, Joe. This next question is around the opening date. So it's asking why isn't the service being introduced sooner than 2024, which is the anticipated opening date.
Why is it going to take so long, up to 2024? This is a question for Justin Lewis.
Thanks for the question. And I think that 2024 in the broader picture, the more strategic picture when it comes to capital infrastructure, and speaking to that piece first and foremost, there are renovations and stuff that have to happen at the building, and that takes some time to be able to do those. In addition to that, with the pandemic that we're just still in and still dealing with, there are aspects of that actually affect the overall infrastructure of the project, as well as being able to, facilitate the program going into the location. So I think there's a combination of a lot of things there that play into that, as well as the renovation and the construction work that will take for us to get to the point of having the built environment in a space created in a space that's actually usable. Steve, do you want to add anything?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Justin. So, yeah, I'm eager to open up in 2024. I wish I could open up sooner, but these renovations take time, and the current operator, we're waiting for them to vacate the building so we can start those renovations. And I think the most timely piece of all of this will be those renovations. Fortunately, it all takes time.
Thank you very much, Calvin. Is there another written question that we can pose to our panelists?
Yep. We have one more in here, and it is around just wondering about guaranteeing how administration will be, and asking if there are any instances of poor behavior from future residents. How will that be handled? Yeah, how will that be handled?
I think that's a question for Steve.
Yep. Yeah, back
What's
again.
the guarantee that this will be run better and that there will be consequences for bad behavior in the neighborhood?
Okay. Well, NOMRES currently operates 2 shelters. We work with a number of individuals that sometimes come with a range of different experiences, and sometimes trauma is in their life experiences. So how we deal with people who may be erratic is we try to talk to them. We treat them with kindness. We try to get through to them and communicate to them in a good, supportive, and healthy way. And we try to address the issue. Of course, 9 times out of 10, that usually works, and it works really well. And there's the odd time where it doesn't necessarily work. And if the behavior gets too erratic, we'll have to call the proper authorities to help us to either diffuse the situation or deal with the situation. With the current NOMRES shelters, we have very few incidents with residents where the police have to be engaged, and we have very few complaints from local citizens in our neighborhood. And with the 2 NOMRES shelters up in Vaughan Road, we are actively engaged with our neighbors, and they're very supportive of the programs and services. And sometimes the neighbors even contribute to winter drives of clothing or socks for the guys, and they're always asking for ways to be helpful. There is an opportunity for local residents to participate through the Community Liaison Committee, and that will be formed once the shelter is operational. And this will be a healthy forum for residents to voice those concerns so that we can address them in a timely and effective manner.
Great, thank you very much. Calvin, any other questions from the written format?
There's nothing more in our deck. Just take another look.
Another look. I do see one that's come in. Comment suggesting that they're hoping that planning, urban design, and heritage are consulted on this design direction. The prominent location, proposed cladding, and significant design changes seem to warrant it. And maybe you want to make a quick comment there, Charles, on how you will engage urban design and heritage at the city.
Yeah, thank you. We are in the design stage, and it will be part of the normal process, the normal city process. So we will follow along and do what we're expected to do to further the design along and the approval process.
Okay, Carolyn, let's try one more time. Are there any questions, oral questions that people have that they want to present?
I am not seeing any hands raised just now.
And back to you. Calvin, are there any written questions?
There are no more written questions or pre-received questions.
Okay, so it looks like we'll be able to finish before 8 o'clock. Let's give it 30 seconds more for anyone who wants to answer an oral question or submit a written question. Now's your chance to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. Again, if you are on the phone and you want to ask a question, to raise your hand, just press *3 and we'll be able to do that. Okay, so I think we're gonna call it an evening. Maybe we'll go to the next to the final slides. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. You have received a lot of information, and I really hope that the city folks, the architect, NamiRes, have been able to clarify the issues and questions of concern. Following tonight's meeting, we will be summarizing all the questions and comments received into a report that will be sent then to people who have signed up on the email list. And again, that email list is there before you, clc.67adelaide@gmail.com. I would also encourage you to visit the project website, which is at toronto.ca/shelter expansion sites. There you have it on the screen. You might want to take a screenshot. That is where we post commonly asked questions, new information that comes forward, timelines, everything you needed to know about 67 Adelaide will be on that site. Again, a video recording of the session will be posted on the city's YouTube channel if you would like to share with anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight's meeting. Now I'd like to do one final check. Councillor Wong Tam, Justin, Steve, Charles, maybe in that order, to give any final comments before we call it an evening. Councillor Wong Tam.
Sure. Thank you very much, Joe. And it was great to hear many of the questions that were raised this evening. I had also heard some of those questions in conversations I've had with community members out for walks and just for conversations. So there were no surprises. And I think what was really encouraging for me to also hear is that the answers from Steve are entirely consistent to what he provided myself in our earlier 3 briefings and meetings, and I really appreciate the level of detail he went into. So I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us, and especially to our facilitator, Joe Mihevik, today. It was great to hear you and see you in action. My office will remain open to any other further questions or inquiries or comments and feedback that may come in after this meeting. Sometimes we can get a little bit shy, of course, in these group settings, but I don't want you to be shy when you want to talk to me. So please reach out. Felicity Campbell is my staff lead for the St. Lawrence neighborhood. Many of you may know her if you've been working on the First Parliament advocacy work, or perhaps you've been part of the BIA conversations or the Neighborhood Association conversations. We have been there for many months now, just addressing some of the COVID concerns. And so I want you to know that both Felicity and I are here to listen and to help whenever and wherever we can. So thank you very much, everyone, and please be safe and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Justin, any final comments?
Joe Miigwech, Councillor Wong Tam. I just want to say big chi miigwech to all of our city staff that actually are in the background of this tonight and doing all the hard work to make sure that it's going forward in a good way. I want to say, chi miigwech to Steve Teakins from NamiRes for being here and working on this project with us. This is something that the City of Toronto doesn't have, and there is a need here for it. And I'm really excited for this project, and I know Steve is, as well as the staff and everyone here on this call today. So I just want to say a big chi miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the community for their insights, and we'll take all the comments into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And final word to Steve, you can round out the evening.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining this community meeting tonight. Look, I understand if there's a little bit of nervousness about this new shelter coming into the neighborhood and operating. I can assure you that this shelter has been well planned. It's been in the works for 13 years. We're making sure that the design of the building is well thought out, so it is serving our clients in the best possible way. The programming that we're going to have, we already know it's proven for existing shelters that it works really well with our clients in helping them to leave the shelter in better shape when they came in. So we look to expand this continuum of care. We're not just only a shelter provider, we're also a housing provider. And we know that the cure to homelessness is very simple. It's housing. So we're going to work really hard with the residents that use this shelter to help them move away from their experiences with homelessness so that they're housed. The shelter will be operated in a very responsible way, and it will be different than the other shelters that people may have concerns with in Councillor Wong Tam's ward. This will be well thought out. So in closing, I want to say Chimigwech, and I look forward to operating in your neighborhood in the very near future. And unfortunately, the near future for when we start operating is 3 years away. So we're still going to be doing some more planning and thinking this out. So you all have a wonderful evening and take care of yourselves.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.